Let's turn in our Bibles to, I'd like you to go to Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6. And we have, of course, a few images we're going to be looking at on the screen. Yes. God's miracle through who? It's hard to read it on there, isn't it? Very soon the two TVs that Andy put a lot of money into are going to be up. And I promise you, Andy, they'll be up soon. It's been very busy, but we'll be able to see the graphics a little better on those than a projector. But until that moment, I'll just tell you what's up there if you can't read it. But God's miracle through... Does that mean the miracle comes from us? Let's take a look here. We've got a story that's an incredible... You've heard it so many times. If you're ever dealt with the Bible, you've probably heard stories about this event. Let's see, is it working here? If I got it. Are we online or is this thing not operational? All right, hit the next one. I guess it looks like our thing's having a good time today. In the book of Mark, chapter 6, we're going to start with verse 30. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported him all the things that they had done and taught. Because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. He said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and we can get some rest." So Jesus and them, they went away to a solitary place. And just earlier, by the way, it's a dark time. They had just discovered that John the Baptist had been executed by Herod. Herod, not the Great, his father, who tried to kill Jesus, but Herod Antipas. And it's a dark time when someone that is a light for God is extinguished by the sword. They want to go away for a second to a solitary place. But they saw so many coming that they couldn't get away. So Jesus wants his time away with the disciples just to talk, right? But people come and they want to be healed. They want to hear the words of life. If you've been in ministry, you know the feeling. Who here has ever been a missionary to another country? Maybe a missionary even for a short time. You want to have 5 minutes of time to yourself, but sometimes that's hard. Especially if you're doing what we oftentimes do is we'll do dental work if we're doing a mission trip. You do dental and medical, and it's like it keeps going, and people keep coming, and you want to stop. This is the time when we're supposed to stop at 6 o'clock, but there's a long line. How do you stop? And we say, well, you got to eat. You got to eat. You got to survive. Okay, well, I remember when I did a mission trip, one of the dental guys, the dentist there, "Pastor, I know how Jesus felt. I see this line, but I'm not going to stop. We're going to keep working. There's guys that need extractions. So in the same way, in the case of Jesus and the disciples, these people needed him. And in fact, it says, verse 34, when Jesus landed and saw the large crowd, he had what? What? Compassion. Spalaxomai. I care for is in Greek. Spalax. It's right here. When you have compassion for a person, you feel it here. When you see someone hurting, it doesn't hurt you here, even though your brain sees it. It's here where you cry. Your body, When someone passes away that you love, that's either you can't eat or you eat too much, right? That's how it works. It's this part of the body that is affected. When you're crying, it's the shaking part. Here, your head goes down. Jesus, it says it felt compassion. He felt their need. He had compassion. You know, how many of us have compassion? Sometimes in a world where you have compassion, sometimes you become the slave to the world. You care about others too much and you can't get anything for yourself. And I understand that. While at the same time, there's a way to balance it and actually care for others without disconnecting yourself from health, from reality. We can do this. We must learn compassion. Narcissism is uncompassionate. And we as a society are very narcissist. We want, generally, I say we generally, is narcissism has an inability to care for another person. It's not possible because all we're worried about is us. Compassion is about caring for others. Not more than ourselves, but to love your neighbor as yourself. That's different than just caring for someone else and letting yourself waste away. So he has compassion. Sorry, I went off there for a second. And he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. Verse 35, by this time it was late in the day. The disciples came to him. In this remote place, they said, it's already very late. Send the people away so they can get something to eat. But Jesus says, you give them something to eat. You. Okay. Have you ever run potluck and you don't have enough food? And Jesus says, you get him something to eat. What? I'm not going to Costco right now. Right? Right? There ain't no, sorry for my English, there's no Costco out in the Judean countryside near Gennesaret and down on the southern border, southern-eastern border of the Sea of Galilee. There's no 7-Elevens. There's no Costcos. None of those things that normally, or even just a simple restaurant. Nothing. There's raccoons. And the raccoons will grab your food away from you, right? So he says, go get them something to eat. Now I want you to turn to another. This story is in 4 books of the Bible. It's in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But I'd like you to go to John, chapter 6. John 6. John was very close to Jesus, and he gives us insight to the personal relationships in between. Now, Mark does this as well, because that's Peter's gospel. Peter preached Mark as Mark wrote it down. That's why you'll find that Peter is not so much the bad guy in that one, except that one time when he does the 3 denials. That's the one that's left in there. But the other ones, he says, I'm going to ignore that part. I'm going to ignore. In the book of Mark, in the book of John, Peter says something silly. In the book of Mark, it says, some people said. So that's how you can tell it's Peter. Anyway, so in the book of John, chapter 6, we're going to take a look here. Verse 5, same basic structure. Great crowd of people followed him, saw signs, performed healing the sick. Verse 3, Jesus went up on the mountainside, sat down with the disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. Notice that John just colored it in, didn't he? He just colored it in a little bit. Kind of like our time of the year. Passover festival. Soon we'll have a Passover communion here. But verse 5. When Jesus looked up, he saw the great crowd coming toward him. He said to Philip, he said not to all the disciples. In the book of John, he specifically talks to Philip. Where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat? Verse 6. He asked this only to test Philip, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. How do you like that? How John fills in the little gaps. Verse 7, Philip answered him, it would take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one of these people to just have a bite. Now, sometimes we say 5,000. That's a lot, but imagine this. You're counting men. That's how they were generally back then, counting the anthropos, the men. Well, you got women and children too. So it could be a lot more. Who knows? I will tell you what I think happens is this. This is how it is in the ancient world. And we do the same thing today. Nobody was in there going click, 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 click like we do with accounting. Oh, are you here? Okay. Are you present? Oh, you're not present. You're just hanging out here. You're not here, really. Okay. It's not one of those things. It's like this. That looks like 5,000 guys. And there's, I don't know. It's a lot. So they say 5,000. That's how the ancient world was. You know, Benjamin Franklin did those things during the time of the Second Great Awakening. He would look in the crowd and go through calculations in his mind and say, there's about 10,000, 5,000 people here. He'd do that. And that's what they had to do there. It's too much food for these people. We don't have enough money. We just don't have enough money. Verse 8. Another of his disciples named who? Andrew. Okay, he's a younger one. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He spoke up. He said, here is a what? First it says not even 8 months' wages could afford this. And now comes a boy. It could be a kid. It could be someone 12. It could be someone up to about 16 is the Greek word. It's not an infant, but it's a young man. So now how many young men give up their food? Now I don't want to ask how many women give up their food, because I'll get in trouble. But I will say, we got a few Filipinos here. You know baon? Do you give up your baon very easily? Baon is like, in English you would say stash. Your little stash. This is my little stash. Don't touch it, my Twinkie. You don't mess, right? Well, this boy had 5 loaves and 2 fish. And I know some of us say, what, wait, 2 fish, what? You know, culturally speaking, it was good, man. Those fish are smoked fish, you know, from Galilee, these little ones, these little guys. Sometimes even bigger. In the Philippines, you'll have that with a little meal, you know. But maybe it might have been a little larger, maybe even tilapia, because they do pull tilapia out of that, the Sea of Galilee. That's St. Peter's fish. That's what it's considered. We had 2 fish and 5 loaves. So this kid could eat. Because 2 fish and 5 loaves isn't bad, you know. 5 loaves meaning 5 bits of pita bread. Who's from the Middle East here? All right, yes, you got the bread. You know that one now. Usually you have a little hummus, you know, dip it around. Maybe there's different tasting hummus. Ooh, that's delicious. You put the fish and you put them in there and you eat it. It's much, you know, Asia and the Middle East isn't much different except there's bread on this side, rice on that side. Kind of the same thing, right? This guy has this meal. And who here, young people, would give up your baon, your little meal, your meal? You know the first thing I'd say is, there's too many people. It won't help anybody, so I'm going to go hide and eat this. Right? Tell me I'm not right. Come on. Seriously. You're like, oh, I got my stash. There's a lot of people. I'll be okay. I'll be okay. If I share with one person, that means everybody wants it. So, but he came to Andrew, apparently. Or maybe Andrew asked him. Maybe the boy was listening. I don't know. Maybe this might have even been a young Mark. I don't know, because Mark was young man in that same age. You know? Who knows who this young guy was? But Andrew comes and says to the group, including Jesus, here is a boy. He has 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish. Barley bread, pita, you know, but it's kind of harder. Barley isn't as tasty as the wheat. But actually, it's pretty good. When you chew it enough, it starts getting really yummy in the back of the mouth. And so, he takes it with the 2 small fish, but how far will it go among so many? Verse 10, Jesus said, have the people sit down. Okay, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place. And you know, if you've been there, if you've been on the southern eastern side of the bottom of Galilee, you'll notice there's a horn at the bottom. You have, on one side there's Capernaum, and the other side is like some little towns, but it's like a lot of nothing, a lot of grass there. Some of it is kind of wet grass during the winter time, and then it dries out in the summertime, but it's always moist because there's underground water coming through toward the Sea of Galilee along from Dan and also from Caesarea Philippi. They're coming underground to fill up that lake that feeds the Jordan River. So they sit down, plenty of grass there. They sat down, about 5,000 men were there. Verse 11, Jesus then took the loaves and gave thanks. 5 loaves and gave thanks. Thank you, God, that we don't have enough for all of us. No. Thank you, God, that we have enough for all of us. Faith sometimes seems brainless. With miracles, things happen. At the end, there were 12 basketfuls of bread and fish. And I'm sorry to the vegans out there, I'm so sorry. You can eat the bread. We're good. I'll have a little piece of the fish. We'll work it out. Especially if it, never mind. All right. So if there's hummus, it's even better, right? So with God, all things are, as long as it's His choice, right? I mean, He's the one that formed us. I want to talk today about a little bit of faith, a small mustard seed. I'm looking at the time right now, and as you look at, I'm not going to take you to the text, but there's a mustard seed, a smallest little seed. This teeny little seed that means nothing is put in the ground, and an incredible, gigantic tree comes up, and the birds of the sky and the animals of the ground and the chipmunks and the foxes, they all are able to use the shade and the joy of this tree, and from the fruit of the tree that falls, other seeds, they can eat. It becomes incredible. But you must have that small seed of faith, and only then will the mountain move. And then action can happen. Consumer versus what? Producer. In America, we are consumers. We generally like to be. In fact, it's interesting. I was looking at our GDP and things like that. I get into all this stuff. We've become more consumer related. We're not producing as much. And that's hurting us as a country, actually. The countries that produce products and send them across are the ones that oftentimes are benefited more than the ones that just, what I mean by that, producer is you make something and you sell it, or you grow something and you sell it, as opposed to someone that just consumes, which means you go to McDonald's and you buy a burger, right? And we as Christians are taught sometimes even by our leadership to become a bunch of consumers. We get things on YouTube, constantly watching, listening, and I am just as guilty. I watch all the time. Of course, I oftentimes get ideas and I start putting them in. But sometimes we just get stuff and just keep binging. We just binge away. And we sit there and watch the whole TV show, 20,000 episodes. And it's going all day and all night. and the bonbons are going in. We are right? Right? That's how we start. This is why I like movies a lot better than TV. Movies have a beginning and an end, and then you can walk away from it. But with TV, it just keeps going forever. Oh, yeah, the next episode, and half the time, the next episode is almost the same as the first episode, which is almost the same as, but never mind. It depends on who makes it, I guess. Whether they have any creativity at all, which is devoid in our culture today, because we're consumers. When all we do is consume and don't produce, we actually lose our ability to do anything creative. The reason why this child, this young man, this boy, brought the food to Andrew is because he felt he wasn't going to make money from it, but he felt he could do something for someone else. He didn't just say, it's mine to consume. He said, how can I help? Let's take a look real quickly here. Okay, consumer. Now I got the camera here, so I'm going to try to do the double action. Everybody here, you see that up there? Here's the church. See the church? Look at the guy. That's me. How do you like me? I'm very thin today. I have a very white face, and look at my face. I'm unhappy. Very unhappy. Because I'm coming to church to get something. If I go to church and I get something, what happens to me? I get there and I get a blessing, right? And so therefore, now I am happy. Yay! I'm blessed. Now you see the green thing in the hand? You see that? Sometimes we think of it like money. Sometimes we think if we give to God, then we'll get more money. And we like to do that because of Malachi. And Malachi actually was right, but what if when you give to God, maybe God blesses you with something that's better than money? Have you ever thought about that? Yeah, true. I need money too. My roof has holes in it and the rain came through. So I'd like, anybody wants to give me $20,000, I'm there. So anyway, I love money. But you know, actually, I can buy a roof, but I can't buy a relationship with Anna. Yes, that's true. I can't buy love. I can't buy friendship. I can't buy joy. I try. If I put enough ice cream in my mouth, I'll be happy. I go to 31 flavors, and there's only 27 there. I'll be happy if I get all 31. See, that's how we are as human beings. We think that if we just go, we go to the church, cha-ching, now you get your happiness. Sometimes we come out of church really unhappy. Sometimes you hear something and you say, oh my goodness, I need to clean my life. I'm not happy. I'm never going back to that place again. I'm going to be one of those two-timer Christians, which is I go to church on Easter and Christmas and I'm through. Right? We all have the consumer to us, don't we? We all want to receive. And it's good to receive. That's life. It's a symbiotic circle, right? You have to give to receive, and it goes, but I want you to change your mind and your heart, and I want you to look at God and church completely different today than you might have ever thought about it. Instead of being a what? Consumer, let's take a look at, well, there, I just wrote that thing there. Basically, it's the big payoff. Yay, blessing. Okay, we're so happy. Before I was unhappy. See that? I was unhappy there, and now I'm happy because I'm blessed, because I did the right things. Now let's look at it differently. Let's look at the difference between the consumer and the producer. Blessings come from God, not necessarily money. That's what I mentioned, right? Sometimes there's things that are better. In fact, money, remember the demolition? Money burns. You know that. Money and its worth. We know that today because it used to be you could go to 7-Eleven and get a cup of coffee for 99 cents, and now it's $2.50. And it just took like a year and a half for that to happen. Money can disappear. And one day, we may go to 7-Eleven and have $20 for it. You know that, right? It's called inflation. Very simple thing, inflation. Meaning that the worth of the money drops because the price of the product goes up. There were times in history, especially the Weimar Republic, where there are pictures of an old guy with a wheelbarrow filled with Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. Money and its worth can go away. But there are things that are more important than money. And it's not necessarily money which is the blessing. Look, there's one guy that's happy. Hopefully that's me. Except he doesn't have a big nose like me, right? Then there's the unhappy. And we go to church, right? And guess what happens? Blessing increased. Did you notice he already had the green thing in his hand? Did you notice that? And we're not talking about money. We're talking about ability to share. Like the boy. You know the boy that went to Andrew and says, I have bread, I have fish. How can we use this? We bring it in, and you know what happens? A miracle. Look at that. And it's not only blessing of these two, and by the way, there's still an unhappy guy, because I know every church has at least one unhappy guy. There's always the guy that's upset. No matter what church you go to, there's going to be one guy. I'm a pastor, I know. There's always going to be the one guy that's upset at everything. But you know what? That doesn't make him any less a child of God. It's okay. God didn't tell you have to be happy, happy, happy all the time. You have to have joy, and sometimes joy is hard to discern. Here's the thing. How about this? Come and bless God, and you will find blessing. And that blessing will be compounded in interest. In Ecclesiastes, place your bread upon the waters, and it shall come back. It won't come back soggy. It'll come back to you many days. In other words, you have to give to live. My friends, you know that a miracle happens. What happened? Not necessarily money. What happened? Oh, we lost our, okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Fabio. He's working it out. All right. And I got to tell you that coming to God with a blessing in your hand, whether it be cash or action, something you can produce, will expand your ability to be blessed, sometimes by the very item you bring. This is the only way our church exists. The only way we came about. We should not have grown the way we grew as a Seventh-day Adventist church in the times we did, but we're worldwide. Massive. We have family worldwide because of people willing to give of themselves, not just cash, but themselves. Because giving your time is worth more than money. Giving your action is way more important than pieces of paper. Though I'd love to have us to have paper. I love gold bars. I'll take it every day. But you know what we need more? People. Because it's people that Jesus died for, not stuff. All this stuff goes away, but people matter. We continue. All it is making choices in our lives. And the only reason why I have the money here is because this is the woman with the, she gave all she had. And it was about these two little coins, these two little, what are they called, drachma or whatever they are. Maybe it's a lepton. And this little one, the little teeny copper coin that she gives, two of them. And someone says, oh, that's not very important. But Jesus knew it was everything. Are we willing to give of ourselves to God? Not just our cash, us. Because I want to tell you something very real. Without you, there is no miracle. God uses people just like you and me. You may have never known God, or your family may never have known God. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because He knew you. He knows your family. He's called you. And He has a job for you. He wants you to produce, not just consume, but really do something. Because everybody doing, I love this, it's a fortune cookie of mine. If I ever had a fortune cookie company, I would put this one inside many fortune cookie. 2 fortune cookie things. Number 1, many people doing small thing make everyone happy. But then I got another one, which is few people doing everything make everyone upset. When we work together, something happens. I want you, and God wants you, wherever you are, to give to Him, because that is the only way that you will find joy and miracles in your life.